You know, I never understand the people of Earth. I have spent the day using, abusing, even tried to kill you. If you have behaved as I have, I should have been pleased at your demise. Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about The Twin Dilemma, written by Anthony Steeves and is directed by Peter Moffat. This is a 4-part adventure that introduces Colin Baker as our 6th incarnation of the particular Time Lord known only as the Doctor. This is a very controversial story because of its the lack of a fan appreciation for this story. It on multiple occasions in the Doctor Who magazine polls in which they rate every Doctor Who story, this story has come absolute last in most times, and the dramatic turnover from the Case of Androzani, which was voted number 1 most of the time, to go down to this must feel like a huge drop in quality when watching it for the first time. This also sets up the Sixth Doctor's character, in which he is suffering from something's gone wrong with the regeneration process, and so he's become arrogant, melodramatic, and just overall very I'm trying to think of the words to describe Colin Baker. What the words to describe the Sixth Doctor? And because of this situation, we were left with a Doctor where not much people knew whether they liked him or not. It doesn't help that this was actually the last story of season 21, which means that fans would have to wait, leaving this story as their only impression for the Sixth Doctor to decide whether to continue it in season 22. So there was a huge controversial split in the fandom and when Colin Baker was cast. There was also a lot of troubles behind the scenes on whether which direction they wanted to go, as John Nathan Turner wanted a more erratic, more eccentric Doctor, whilst Eric Sadewood wanted basically a James Bond Doctor, one who can whip out quips and is a man of action, separating him from his predecessor. And because of these two conflicting ideas for the Sixth Doctor, a lot of his stories people generally agree on suffer from this dilemma. Get it? Yeah, you got the joke. And so, yeah, this story really had to set up a very controversial Doctor. And though I think the story fails on a massive level, I don't think it's as bad as people made it out to be. I think I can name at least 5 stories in Classic Who that we've already talked about, which I feel are worse than this. And I'm just going to have to state this. I don't really have a favourite Doctor, really. Because really it depends on what mood I'm on at the moment and like what I feel in the moment. But usually my favourite Doctors is Tom Baker, Christopher Eccleston, and Colin Baker. I'm sorry, I just really like Colin Baker. And what really nails him is the actor. Colin Baker is probably one of the few actors that can really get out this eccentric, mentally turmoiled character. Well, I wouldn't say mentally turmoiled, mentally deranged more like. So, yes, so let's get into the story. The story starts off with these 2 young boys who seem to be an expert in mathematics, similar to Adric, only apparently they are one of the, if not the best mathematicians to ever have lived. And they get stolen, they get kidnapped by a man he has like a name which I can't remember, but it's revealed that his like real name is Asmal, and he kidnaps these twins in a plot to try and get them to do math calculations for a scheming plot to try and save his home planet, or at least his planet that he owns. Whilst this is all happening, the authorities get caught up in the action, and so they take a ship to try and capture the ship that kidnapped them. However, most of them was destroyed, and one of them lands on the asteroid Titan 3, where everyone except one person dies. So now let's get on to the main grip of this adventure, the Doctor and Perry's relationship. One of the reasons why this story is so controversial and why his era is so controversial is the dynamic between the Sixth Doctor and Perry. So to backtrack a bit, Perry introduced in the second to last Fifth Doctor story, Planet of Fire, to which her and the Doctor had a very neutral understanding of one another, as the Doctor was a very nice and charming person back then. He could get grumpy from time to time, but he could never raise his voice. He was always understanding of Perry. However, now we have a Doctor which is suffering from where something has gone wrong in the regeneration process, which is on making him having, as Perry describes it, fits of outbursts, where he's not acting like himself. He accuses everyone against him. He thinks really only for himself, and yeah, they get a lot of caught up emotions. And there's no way of putting it. There's no other way of putting it. Perry in this dynamic is in an abusive relationship. Not as in like they're a couple, but Perry is clearly being treated horribly by her travelling counterpart, who's constantly shouting at her, just constantly just underlining her, and really isn't likeable towards her. Although I think that aspect of the story really slowly sets in, because at the start of the story they do kind of explain it as, like I said, the Doctor is suffering from some sort of post-traumatic stress of the regeneration, or maybe it was something to do with the process going wrong. And he starts off with just constantly just like infatuated with himself, as he looks in the mirror and he's just really happy and stuff. And when Perry questions him and is like, she's confused and she doesn't know what's going on, the Doctor just shouts at her, screams in her face, which comes off as a very unlikable character. But like I said, there's that underlying idea in this story anyway, that something has gone wrong and the characters are going to grow with that. And I think that's actually a really cool idea for a story. Let me say that, a story. Because the problem with this relationship and this dynamic, in my opinion, is that they decided to span it out throughout a majority of stories. So this plot thread stays on throughout the rest of this story, and it really doesn't help Colin Baker's first impressions, as he is basically shown to be rude, arrogant, and just self-indulgent. There's even a point where a really famous scene, for better or for worse, in which where the Doctor links Perry's name with a Peri from Greek mythology, a fairy that was that became good but was originally evil, and the Doctor, in his mad state, puts the idea in his head that Peri is an evil spy against the Doctor, and so the Doctor tries to strangle her to death before Peri shows a mirror into his face, and the Doctor is then recovers a little bit, and he doesn't seem to have any memory of what happened. And when Perry seems really scared, the doctor does seem kind of genuinely concerned for a moment, though that moment dismisses quickly when the doctor thinks that something's gone wrong, and he forces her to basically help him become a hermit. And so they decide to go to an abandoned asteroid, Titan 3. Now, this Strangle scene has become one of the where a lot of people point to this scene and state this is the reason why they don't like the Sixth Doctor. And if you're one of those people, I do understand, but hear me out. In the context of this story, that Strangle was him purposely acting out of character. It was him in a deranged state where his mind wasn't working properly. And when he clicks that, when he's recovered for a little bit and he sees Perry scared, he does seem genuinely concerned, and he does take it off himself, and why he takes on the hermit idea. So I don't think it's as bad as people make it out to be, but it does set up an underlying issue throughout the story of their relationship, which, like I said, goes out throughout the rest of the story. So it really hinders the enjoyable factor of the Doctor and Perry's dynamic. Although, looking from this story from Perry's point of view, it's kind of, I wouldn't say good. It's not good at all, but it is kind of interesting. From Perry's point of view, she has been travelling with this very kind and young man, and she even says that she kind of liked him, kind of giving the impression that she kind of fancied him. And this changes the Doctor that she does not understand. And she still sticks around with him, despite her being treated horribly. Now, this would be I don't think it was intentional, but this does have some real-life examples of how abusive relationships work. In most cases, the reason why the abuse victim stays in a relationship is because the person once seen the abuser as innocent before, and it's only when time's gone wrong or something bad and toxic, it gets a bit toxic, but they stay in the relationship in the dire hopes that one day they can get them back to their normal self. So I think that's really interesting from Perry's point of view. Like I said, I don't think it's intentional, and I think that this meaning to their relationship is really just me might be overreading it, but that's my opinion on it. But anyway, on to the plot. So the Doctor becomes a pilgrim. Well, he plans to become a pilgrim on the asteroid Titan 3, where they discovered the crashed ship. And again, we get a great example of just this really outlandish Doctor as Perry, worrying that it's really cold and dangerous, tells the Doctor to go back into the TARDIS. No one could survive this crash. And the Doctor, being as abrasive as always, he's like, go back to the TARDIS. This is for heroes, not for scared little girls. And they look around the ship to discover a survivor. I believe his name is Hugo Lang. He's the lieutenant just trying to find these kidnapped children. And the Doctor basically takes him to the TARDIS, saving his life. And the Doctor states that if we went with the idea of Perry and went back to the TARDIS, they would have left this guy for dead. And he kind of takes it out on her when Perry's like, thank God he's alive. And the Doctor's like, yes, little help from you. So yeah, you you could see why a lot of people don't like this story. It's got that very brash, really unsympathetic doctor in this story, which I think what actually works in this story to its benefit is that because the doctor doesn't know his own mindset of the story, we as a viewing audience also don't know. And so we as an audience are on our seats as we're trying to work out, will the doctor recover or not? Will he save the day? Because we are now generally, what I think what really works in this story and why I don't think it's as bad as people make it out to be, is that this erratic doctor makes you generally feel like at any moment the doctor could just abandon people and let people to die. But anyway, on this asteroid, they find another ship, and the doctor decides to go and explore it. Before, I just forgot to mention, the cliffhanger to part 1 is absolutely hilarious, as the guy that they saved recovers a bit, and he points a gun at the doctor. And not to give any criticism to Colin Baker's performance, but I can't help but feel that his face seems just so disinterested. He's just like, oh no. I think that was less to do with Colin Baker and just some really quick on the editing front, and the cliffhanger being edited in a really quick way, and Colin Baker, I think, tried to play it a lot more slower, and so we get this really hindered, really funny in my opinion, cliffhanger. So anyway, the doctor goes after the ship as Lang collapses again, and Perry hides his the battery to his gun in one of the sinks in the doctor's wardrobe. Now, speaking of wardrobes, we've got to then talk about the doctor's newfound costume. This was again another controversial element to this story, to the Colin Baker era overall, as he's given a very clownish appearance, almost a cross between an Edwardian. It looks like an Edwardian clown. That's what I've taken from it, especially with the waistcoat and I can't remember what it's called. It's like a tie, but it's got like whirly bits, and his patchwork jacket with the cat pin on his jacket, and a lot of stories behind the scenes explain that John Nathan Turner asked the costume designer to make the most hideous, most tasteless costume for the Doctor, and she was designing all these costumes, but none of them was taken to John Nathan Turner's approval, because she is an artist, and she was made to look into fashion and stuff, and she got so annoyed that she literally just drew a person with a jacket, just got a bunch of colours, scribbled it in, and turned that to John Nathan Turner as a joke, and said, "How about that?" And John Nathan Turner was like, "Excellent." And that's how we got this really outlandish costume. Now, a lot of people, this seems to be split around with the fan base. A lot of people seem to hate it, and a lot of people seem to absolutely love it. I've had my moments where I don't like it, but I've got to admit, it has heavily grown on me. I really can't picture the Doctor wearing anything else. Fun fact, the actual idea of the Doctor's costume in this is throughout his tenure, the costume would have become a bit more sensible and a bit more, it would slowly change throughout his tenure till when it becomes his end and he Colin Baker decides to regenerate, the costume would be perfectly like a sensible thing to wear, and that was the idea of it. However, none of these ideas came into fruition due to many issues on his era and the fact that he was abruptly fired from the series, which is a crying shame in my opinion. Anyway, I think I've spoken a bit too much about the Doctor and Perry's part in this, which is kind of a big part in the story anyway. So let me just speed through the plot of this, because the plot is really, honestly, the weakest part of the story in my opinion. The Doctor and Perry find the twins, and they meet Amsel, who the Doctor recognises as an old friend. He is a Time Lord, just like the Doctor, who befriended the Doctor in his 4th incarnation, I believe they say. Amsel was once a big friend of the Doctor, but now he is in desperate need of these children, as he's basically been overthrown by a massive slug from the mythology of his own planet. And so the Doctor has to travel to the planet that he ruled. I believe it's called like Jabazar or something like that. Jabazar. And the Doctor goes there, discovers that the life has basically been sucked out of it. Instead of a luxurious forest, they land in a wasteland with only dead wood to surround them. And so the Doctor learns about this ancient slug. Now, one of the issues with this story, in my opinion, which I think a lot of people also point to this story, it has one of the weakest Doctor Who villains, easy, by far. It's clearly the mustache twirling villain. It's a villain that always shouts, doesn't really have a good motive apart from, I want to spread my evil across the universe. And it also doesn't help that the performance is way too over the top to take this seriously. And all of those could have been saved if it wasn't for that god-forsaken costume. Now, a lot of people used to joke that Doctor Who productions were always silly looking. Now, a lot of people always used to joke about that the classic Doctor Who's production, especially when it comes to monsters, were pretty outlandish and ridiculous and silly. And I've got to be honest, most of that's not really true, though you do get one or two occasions where the monster does look ridiculous. And here's a great example of just a terribly designed villain. It hardly can move, it has really tiny arms, it kills people by basically trapping them in some sort of green energy field, which makes their blood boil. And it sounds really gruesome, I believe so, but there's a lot of cases in which he should be able to use it. He could easily kill the Doctor, Amsel when he betrays him, Perry, anybody, but he never uses it. Only on his own people who he's now overruling, the people of this planet. They're like this strange cross between a hedgehog and an owl, humanoid beings, and these costumes look ridiculous. They just look absolutely ridiculous. And the story tries to get you to know some of them. Like we've got like a really brutish one. I believe his name was like Nomad or something like that. We have a kind one that, despite still worshipping the main villain, Minar, I believe his name is Minar. Doesn't sound it back. But anyway, we have this young character, this young of this species who is, despite befriending the villain, Minyar, I believe his name is, I can't remember, the slug guy, he still has a good friendship with Amsmar. God damn, I hate these names. I bloody hate these names. The Doctor's friend. Let's just call him the Doctor's friend. but none of them really stick out, and the whole side characters becomes really generic and bland. We also have Hugo Lang, who, after recovering, slowly believes the Doctor and Perry in that they're not kidnapping the children, and so he teams up with the Doctor and Perry, although finding it very difficult to work with them, as the Doctor and Perry are constantly just shouting at each other and clearly not working as well. At one point, when they actually land on the planet through the TARDIS, this character suggests that he goes in alone because the Doctor's fits of outbursts were really hindrant on his plan. We also get a scene in which they find a few of the slug creatures sliding across, and Lang gets his shoes stuck in the slime, which gets turned into some sort of heavy concrete. And again, this shows the Doctor at his most unlikable, shall we say, as the Doctor really doesn't try to help at all and tells him basically to get out of your own mess. You got stuck there, you get yourself out. And when he tries to solve it by shooting some of the concreted slime, the Doctor's like, whatever, do what you want, just don't burn yourself. I don't care. And the Doctor tries going for Amsel, who he believes tried to kill them, although it turns out that that wasn't the case. Basically, Amsel left the Doctor and Perry on the original base on Titan 3, but he only left them there to basically halt them, to stop them from interfering with the plans. But one of these creatures, one of these owl hedgehog people, I can't remember the species name, basically sets a self-destruct timer on it. And the Doctor, believing that Amsel was tempted, was the one who's planned it. One of my favourite scenes of this story is the Doctor walks into his laboratory, sees him, points at him and is like, "Murderer!" and runs at him, jumps over a sofa and strangles the poor old man. Which is just way too funny to describe. So anyway, the Doctor learns that Amsel has come planned to help with the Minar, the slug guy, and their plan is to kidnap these two kids and use their mathematical skills to move two smaller planets on the outer rim of their solar system and make them basically moons to their planet so that they could have a larder, as they say, as they can move more food and vegetables and stuff onto this other planet, as this slug character is basically halting all of the nutrients. However, the Doctor quickly works out that plan is going to fail, because if you move these planets into the other planets, all the orbits will change and it will just chuck all these planets into the sun, where it will become a massive explosion. And the Doctor believes that the slug knows this, and he finds a collective of their eggs, to which he learns that they are basically almost fireproof, and that the plan is to have a bunch of these eggs of the slugs to be on this planet, which will crash into this sun, exploding it, sending the remains of all these slug eggs across the galaxy, invading everybody this egg touches, any planet that this egg touches. And I think that's actually a really cool plan. I just wish that they did more with it, because we only really learned this during the midway of part 4. And so the Doctor and Amsel, who's now believes the Doctor and feels betrayed, go and try to stop the slug. Now, the plan was the Doctor just throws some sort of chemicals over him, but he's barricaded. And the Doctor basically tricks him by using his powers to transfer his mental projection into another body. The Doctor believing that he was going to go into him, to which the Doctor could have just easily drowned him out. However, that's not the case, as the slug takes the body of Amzal, who, because he's an old Time Lord who's at the end of his regeneration cycle, can't hold back the slug. And so the Doctor quickly destroys the body before Amzal before the slug can transfer back to any of those bodies to use its power again. And so Amzal basically, I don't know how it doesn't really describe it very well. Either it's just by coincidence that this character dies of old age at this very moment, or it could be because the strain of two minds in one body, or he could have self-sacrificed himself and basically triggered a suicide mechanism inside of himself, a defensive mechanism to basically take the slug with him. I don't know which one it is. From the dialogue, I would say it's the third one. And the Doctor is in remorse. He feels really down by this, by the fact that an old friend had to die. And so the story ends with the Doctor promising to help the twins and Lang out, and one of the mole people, just call them the mole people, offers to take the Doctor into the TARDIS, and the Doctor's like, I don't like you very much, you could just stay here and rot. God damn you, I love that bit. And so Lang says he's going to stay on his planet because there's nothing much for him back on Earth, and that he wants to have a fresh start here. And the Doctor is like, he says something about like how Lang has no family on Earth, and the Doctor's like, I could believe that, and walks off, and Perry apologises for him. And then when they go back in the TARDIS with the twins, Perry's like, you didn't have to be so rude. And the Doctor basically is like, I'm completely stable now. This is just my personality. You'll just have to get used to it. And he's like, please, just give it some time. You might actually learn to like this new incarnation. And Perry is like, well, I hope I do learn to love it, to like it. And we end on the lines of the Doctor going, well, in any case, I am the Doctor, whether you like it or not. And that's the twin dilemma. Overall, yeah, it's a really weak story. The plot isn't very interesting. The twins really should be something that holds the story together, but really they're, let's be honest, terrible performances, and they're terribly written dialogue, and just the dialogue overall seems to be lacking in terms of the majority of the cast. The plot isn't really thick with anything. It's basically a giant silly slug causing havoc. But I will say there are some things to like about this. Despite the slugs being a very terribly written character, I do like the mythology of them, and we get to see some like cave paintings, and the Doctor builds them up as this really malevolent evil, which I think is really cool, but is let down by the actual character that we see. So I think I would personally wouldn't mind have seen these slug back to get a redemption story, shall we say, for their characters. I would like to see that personally. There are some good moments with the Sixth Doctor and Perry, even though it's very short bursts. The majority of the story has them bickering at each other. Though I will say, in the first half of the story, I think it's mainly episode 1, it's justified because the Doctor's going through these fits. But the fact that the story doesn't resolve that in this story really hinders the dynamic between them, as we are left with basically Perry in an abusive relationship, which is really sad to see. But Colin Baker and Nicola Bryant give out a fantastic performance either way. And Peter Moffat's directing is decent. He used to do some really great directing. I mean, when he was in the first John Nathan Turner season with The State of Decay, he really showed why he was a great director. Here, I feel he's pretty weak. Most of it's mainly mundane. However, there's a really terrible action scene at the end, which is clearly too many cutting, in my opinion. Too many cuts and too many just one person on the camera for the decent action scene to work. But yeah, so overall, it's obviously a bad story. I'm not saying by any stretch of the words that it's a good story. And maybe you like this. Maybe you are one of the people who think it's an underrated gem. If you do, please let me know. I really love hearing unpopular opinions, and I genuinely want to hear people like this story. But personally, I know the script just didn't really help. Though I do love Colin Baker's Doctor. Just putting that out there. So join me next time where the Sixth Doctor and Perry will come face to face with a returning foe, and the Doctor gets reunited with Lytton. So join me next time for the attack of the Cybermen. And I'll see you next time on The Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-da!